Hola familia, welcome to Cafecito y Calidad, where we have quality conversations over coffee. I'm your host, Elizabeth Sanchez, licensed marriage and family therapist. And today we have a returning guest, but you know what? He doesn't like the word guest.
Who said that?
He's a fan favorite
Oh,
co host, but he is back. My dear friend, he's considered family now. Juan Carlos, also known as the Modern Macho.
yes, yes. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course, always. So it's going to be a little different of an episode today. But before we jump in, I'm going to give a little intro and then I'll pass the mic off to you.
I'm listening. Let's do it. Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. So, Carlos is not only a friend, he is a healer, he's a facilitator, he is changing the world one man at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, he is on a journey to combat machismo and he's very motivated and I think this is going to dive into our story today, but I saw that the minute I met Carlos. I saw that there was something really special about him when we had our first conversation at a wellness event. One of our colleagues was hosting, and that's a little bit about what our episode's going to be about today is how we first met, our journey, and where we're at now. But Carlos, is there something you want to that I miss? Oh, you're a
Well,
father too.
I'm a
An amazing
dad.
father. You're a
We
dad.
try. We try. Well, I mean, first and foremost, just accepting all those flowers wholeheartedly. So thank you for that. I appreciate you, Liz. You've been an amazing friend yourself. It's been we talked about this, and I feel very grateful to be able to share space with you, just to be really good friends, to be vulnerable with each other, right? To talk some smack here and there too. Like, there's a lot of safety that comes with that, and I think that's why we
Yeah.
resonated. Being able to be in your family too, you meeting mine. It's been awesome. It's been great. And yeah, I mean, I guess I wanted to start off really just by saying that this episode goes out to all my perfectionists just because I told myself, like, you know what, there's always a lot of structure, which I think is beautiful. There's a lot of, discipline is important. And I think of like sports, and I'm like, at some point though, you just kind of got to go in there and play. Like, you know what the rules are, the discipline is what it is, and then some point you just got to play. And I think I put myself under this stress of wearing all these hats that I want to be great at every single one of them, that like I forget to enjoy it, right? And so kind of what we had similarly talked about
Mhm.
was like, man, we have such great ideas, and we know that there's so much impact in having to share our stories and even listening to other people's stories. And now having an opportunity to be like, dude, like half of our good talks are the talks that we just have on our own when we're just,
Yeah.
making humor out of things, and then it just turns into something very deep and very serious, and then it turns into a moment of vulnerability, and then it turns into a moment of reflection, and all these things that just arise from us just showing up authentic each and every time. And that's something that I think I really admire about you, and I really appreciate about our friendship.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I love the word. So maybe that is the word. Like, the perfectionism, let's take off all these hats. And we had this conversation yesterday where we're like, okay, let's plan this. And I think I told you, Carlos, like, I just want to show up as my authentic self today. I've been doing this for about a year now. You've been doing this for much longer. And there's always something, right? All the terminology, the
Yeah.
psychoeducation, and it's like, well, let's talk about our story. Let's come in as our authentic selves and let's chat.
Yeah,
Because
for
I agree
sure.
with you. I agree with you. Some of the best conversations that we've had is we've met up for coffee at a brewery and we've just started talking, and I've always left with like some new insight or an emotional hangover because of how
Right.
much has come out. So I think that's kind of my intention today, is just showing up as Liz.
I love that. I love that we're setting an intention too. Like, this is what this is gonna be. And because that's new to me, right? And I appreciate that reminder of like, yeah, set an intention for everything that you do. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Showing up as
Yeah.
myself and enjoying the
Yeah.
conversation.
All
And
right.
what better
So
way than talking about, like, it's the month of relationships, month of, you know connection, and I'm like, dude, why don't we talk about how we met and where, like, why we've been able to, I think, where we've clicked. Because even I think up until yesterday, we were both kind of reflecting on, yeah, why why did we click? Like I'm not mad about it, but it was like, yeah, that's true. Why did we gravitate towards each other, right? Like I've hosted
Yeah.
my podcast. I've also had guests. You've had guests, and so I'm like, but it's turned into more. What the heck happened that caused that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever I've had you on my platforms, and my community just loves the energy. My team loves the energy.
No,
And
it seems
what
amazing.
is it? What is it? And we've done some content together, and I think it would. Well, let's go back then. Let's take people down memory lane, and let's
Yeah.
talk about where we met. And I think what's important too is maybe talking about where we were at in our lives during that
Yeah.
time, because I think that had to do a lot of why we've how we connected and why we've continued to connect, and our
Sure.
friendship has continued to grow. So do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I can go ahead and start us off. I mean, I think so. I've shared a lot about my story. It's out there as a construction worker myself. Ready to kind of take my life away, feeling like I just wasn't man enough, and I was in the manliest of manly industries, and I was capable of doing it, and yet I still felt like I didn't fit in. Carrying a lot of guilt for spanking my child and yelling at him, and then trying to find alcohol and drugs to cope, and knowing that a lot of that wasn't okay, but just like because I knew that it wasn't okay, made it even more frustrating for me, and I was becoming more resentful, and going through all of that, starting therapy. And so where I was at when I met you was actually, and shout out to Vidi. She reached out to me. She knew about the platform. My best friend and I had already been started the podcast and starting these conversations and doing social events. I was in like my early stages of, I know that I have this gift of facilitating and holding space, but not embracing it, like really minimizing like just making it seem like, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I do this, but it's like, no, bro, like you do, man. You put these events together and you help other men, and they help you as well, right? Like this turns into like a team, it turns into a community. And so, um, she reached out to me and was like, hey, there's this wellness event, with a bunch of different modalities. There's going to be like food, there's going to be like candles, there's and just all kinds of stuff that I was like, oh God, right? Like this is not within my comfort zone at all. But I think I had told myself like, well, dude, practicing what you preach, right? We're breaking cycles. We're being willing to try new things. And so I think I had told myself like, just go. And the idea isn't to lean into a different lifestyle. The idea is just to try something new. And at least if that's not about, you're not about it, that's cool. But you tried it and you were willing. Like I think that's where I was at my point in my life, where it was like just challenging myself to do new things. So I show up to this event. It's like I'm like the only guy there. I think I saw maybe like 3 or 4 dudes in this whole event, right? There's like acupuncture, they're doing like different like breath work, which even at the time breath work was just like, yeah, this is a women environment. Like this is not for me. And personally, at a point, I was going through a very, very, very difficult breakup, um, where I think I was starting to hold myself accountable. There was a lot of resentment that I was holding on to because I just felt like the fingers were being pointed at me as the bad guy. And I was in this pickle because I'm willing to hold myself accountable and understand where I made my mistakes. And I was also very resentful of like feeling as though the other individual was almost being praised for everything that they had done. And that's how I perceived it in my head, right? So it was hard for me to hold myself accountable in that sense because I was so caught up on all these outside and external things that were happening out of my control. And so, yeah, I showed up to the event just like clueless. Like, I'm just going to go. Maybe I can start networking, start meeting people, which is kind of what I didn't want to do. I wasn't really ready to like socialize with people. And, yeah, I ran into you. I ran into Vidi introduced me to you, to Juana. Who else was with you guys?
Mhm.
Somebody else, right? It's
It
just
was just
three of you.
Juana and myself, and then Vidi.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I was buying a candle, and then she introduced me to you guys, and she was like,
You're like,
"Hey."
smell my candle.
I know all of a sudden, like I knew what the heck I was doing. I'm a candle guy. No, I'm not.
You're
uh,
into plants now.
yeah, yeah. Hey, and cats. And so and so so yeah. God, I just threw my train of thought there. Um, Yeah, so I'm like, okay, cool. You guys, we approached me and they were like, oh, like that's so cool. You're a therapist. And I was like, what the heck? I was like, no, I'm not a therapist. Like I'm a construction worker. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, the Modern Macho, blah, 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 blah. And I think it was just so weird because I was going through that point in my life where I was seen as the old me, right? And so it was kind of like to have individuals see me as this person and to give me flowers about the things that I was doing was like, this feels good, but like I don't deserve this. Like I don't deserve to be seen for
Mm.
who you see me as. And like we've never really talked about this, right? Like this was kind of just where I was at that point. And so yeah, I was like that felt good, but it was like don't enjoy that, bro. Don't enjoy that because you're not deserving of what these people see in you. They don't know like what you've done in the past, right? I was carrying a lot of guilt. I had not forgiven myself for a lot of things that I had done in the past. And yeah, so it felt nice. It felt nice, and then that was it. And then it was just like we just kind of bullshit, and I could just tell like the vibe just kind of clicked, right?
Mhm.
And then yeah, when you invited me to be a guest on your podcast, I was tripping, man. I mean, I give you flowers all the time. I give your team flowers, like your guys'
It still
content.
shocks me. I'm sorry, but you were radiating so much confidence at that event. And I think that's why I was like, I gravitated towards you. Well, first of all, VD was like, oh, the Modern Macho's over there. And I was like, oh, I think I've heard of him. And we just, like the way that you just had the conversation going, you were so open. And yeah, I was like, oh, you're a therapist. You're a unicorn in our
Right.
industry.
I
There's
remember you
no
saying that.
man, a Latino man here as a therapist. Like, what? And you're like, no, I'm not. But the way that you just started to talk about your story, not what you're sharing today, but the way that you were so open and you just kept going. I feel like that conversation could have kept going that day, but
Sure.
I was like, okay, I'm tired. We got to get going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would have been a long day for both of us.
Yeah, yeah, but I didn't see that. And I think what you're talking about is shame because I didn't
Yeah,
sense the shame.
absolutely. There was, like I said, there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of guilt. Um, and I think for the first time though, I didn't feel like I was playing a role. Like I didn't feel like I was having to be someone that I
Mm,
wasn't. It was just like those are boundaries too. Like I really don't know you guys yet. Like I'm not gonna be completely
mhm.
open like that. Like
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
parts of me that I can be vulnerable, and then I have boundaries on other parts of me that is like
Mhm.
I keep that really tight within my village. And so yeah, I was just like, dude, like the Modern Macho, it ain't really shit. Like it's just me talking with other dudes. Like I minimized it. I always minimized it. That's what I was always doing at that point in my life. And so, yeah, when you told me to be a guest, again, I give you guys flowers because your guys' content is just, it's amazing,
Mm.
dude. Like the second you reached out to me and I was looking at all the work that your team was doing and I was looking at the conversations that you were having and I was like, yo, this is dope. Like this is legit.
Mm.
Um, and then the imposter syndrome of like, why the fuck would you want me on here? Like, I mean, I get it. I have a story. Okay, I get. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't understand. Well, I was like, whatever. Like, I'll just go. I'll show up. And I think what really the pivot for me was when we had the conversation about like me. I was sharing me holding myself accountable in how, as a man, being brought up with the machismo mindset, something that I didn't choose to be brought up with, but I did choose to uphold the beliefs on.
Mm.
I was starting to hold myself accountable and understand, like, yeah, this isn't cool. This isn't good. Like, the fact that what matters most to me is whether she can cook or not is like, I don't really actually care about that, but I'm supposed to. Like, I'm so conflicted. And I remember when we had that conversation, as a brown woman yourself, like, I remember you making a
Mhm.
comment about like, yeah, and as women, we've contributed to this. So imagine, bro, I'm at a
Mhm.
point in my life where I feel like everyone's pointing the finger at me. It's like, dude, I can hold myself accountable. You don't need to shame me. Like, I'm not asking you to not give me consequences, but like all this shaming that people are doing for me, like, I feel like this isn't okay. I shouldn't have to prove myself because I made a mistake. And you literally popped in just at the right time because then when you said that, I was like, what? Can you say that again? Like, you know what I mean? It felt like it
Yeah.
was more like, hey, again, being held accountable, which I'm smart enough and level-headed enough to understand. And so for you to kind of validate that, I
Mhm.
had never had anything like that in my life. And so it was just like, whoa, dude, like that's fucking dope. Like that was powerful. And then I think that made
Mm.
me feel safe enough to continue to be vulnerable. And then
Mhm.
I think from there we just clicked, and it was like, yo, we can really
Yeah.
talk. Like, I feel comfortable talking about how I feel about women, not because I genuinely feel it, but because I know that if we don't start the conversations, we can't move past them. I didn't feel like I was being judged anymore.
Mm. That's so great because as I'm reflecting and as I'm listening to you talk, I agree with that. I feel that every conversation we've had, it's almost like an onion, right? Like another layer
Yeah, yeah,
is
for sure.
shed, right? And it's because there is that level of safety in our relationship. Um, as I go back and remember that wellness event, and we talked about this yesterday, I think that we were both in very similar spots. I had just ended a partnership with my old business partner, and I had mentioned to you, I think prior to that event, I had been in partnerships and in relationships with somebody all the time, whether it was business, right, or I was at a agency to work, or just in general. I was always in partnership with somebody, Carlos. And this was the first time that I decided to make the decision and branch on my own and be my own boss, like not lean on anybody. And
Mm,
it was just me. And it was very scary. Like it
sure,
was
yeah,
so scary. I didn't have beside, obviously I have my team that I talk to and we go through things, but this was like, this is your brand. This is you, Liz. And, my son was still young and we were just probably getting out of the pandemic, and I felt lost. I felt lost because I was still grieving that partnership. I was trying to navigate motherhood. I'm a wife, and I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I felt very confused, and I was just like, you know what? We're just gonna do this, and we're just gonna go with it. But I think maybe that's what I saw in you too, that you were on your own journey of self discovery,
yeah.
and I was like, wow, he gets me. And I think that's what I resonated with. And just your level of vulnerability and being so authentic around your story, I feel like that's something that I'm starting to get comfortable with. Is that
Mm,
everybody sees the perfection, right? Like you see the content, like you mentioned, it's beautiful. You see the brand, you see Liz, but have I told my story in depth? No. And I think because there is some shame around some of my life experiences, and maybe those parts of me saw that in you, that you were doing it, you're way ahead of me
oh,
in your
stop
healing
it.
journey.
Stop it.
No, I do, I feel like you were a mirror, like he's doing it, what's holding you back, Liz? And I think it's that fear of, well, what are people going to think when they really do see not only this part of Liz but all the others?
Mm. What do you think they're gonna think?
I don't know, like, oh, so she's really not the amazing or this kind and sweet person, because there's so many different facets of me.
Sure.
And because it goes going back to my upbringing, it was never accepted. Like I was
Mm,
always those parts of me were like shamed. They were put down, and I was expected as the eldest daughter to be perfect,
yeah.
be and whenever I was not, or I stepped outside of the what my parents expected of me, I was put down. I was told I was dumb. I was told that, well, por qué dices eso? Like, there was always something. And
Right.
so I think from an early age I learned that we'll put those parts away. Put those
Mm,
parts away, and these are the ones that you're getting positively reinforced, right?
yeah.
And I think now when I left my partnership and I started this new journey, like I started to nurture those parts of me. And I'm still working on it, it's a lifelong journey, but I think that's going back to that. Like I feel like that's what I saw in you. Like
Mm,
I want to be there. I want to get to the point where I'm like, cuz you talk, Carlos, and you say some of the things that we're all thinking.
right.
And I told you this
And it
yesterday.
has its pros and cons, dude, right? Like you said, there's always a struggle. Like now I feel I think we talked about it. I was like, now I feel like, when you're at the sink and you just pour the water, it's all cloudy, and you're like, a filter right now would be nice, right? Like,
But
like I mean,
it's your gift.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it all has its pros and cons. It is nice to reflect on the freedom that comes with it, and being able to own my story, and know that it's like I can now openly say like, yeah, I used to spank my kid, and it's so liberating to just know that it's like,
Yeah.
if you decide to judge me, I understand that you're projecting, and I know better than to take it personal. Right. And I also have the empathy now where I know that if a dad was to say he did it before, I'm like, that's not you
Mhm.
no more, though. We don't have to always be that person.
Yeah.
What do you think it's holding you back from? Like, because obviously, like, you're not
Mhm.
just okay with the shame of it, and like you said, I think you've buried it for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, it's intriguing. What do you think it's holding you back from?
Hmm. It's I need to learn to accept those parts of myself.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to. I've had to. I had a really rough year last year, and those parts of me came out, and I'm like, they're like poking their head. Like,
Mm,
you gotta pay attention to me. Like, and I just feel like, and I think we talked about this yesterday, that I don't know unconditional love. It's something that I'm learning to receive. I was in Arizona for my father-in-law, and the fact that you were checking in on me, seeing how I was doing, seeing how my family was doing, I was like, wow, like that's so uncomfortable.
yes.
Like this exists, right?
Yes.
And
No,
so
I'm
I'm
listening.
no, so I think that you're modeling a lot of that. Like a lot of the friendships that I have now are modeling unconditional love that I have to now give those parts of myself that I've been so hard on. Like
Yeah.
go ahead, Carlos.
No, I'm listening. I'm just listening.
Um, yeah, so I think that's what it is I need to continue working on learning to unconditionally love those parts of myself. And because they're beautiful parts, but I don't see them as that just yet. And I've been in therapy for a very long time, processing some of those experiences that got me to that.
Sure.
And but learning just to say thank you, Carlos, for checking in on me versus like, you don't have to do that. I'm a bother. Like, but I'm
Right.
just saying gracias. Like, thank you. And a lot of my friends too, I had a really last year, for those of you who don't know, I went no contact with my family. And like that was really hard. But the amount of love and support that I got from my community, the ones who didn't judge me for going no contact, like it's been so healing, so healing. And I'm learning to say, thank you. Thank you for checking in on me. Thank you for taking the last hour just to let me talk and vent and cry and be angry and feel all the feels, because I was always told to put those away and hide them. And like, why are you feeling that way? Aren't you grateful for everything that you have? And I've been surrounded like with people like yourself that are like willing to listen without judgment, with just love and support. And that's has started to help me, Carlos.
Dude, that's powerful, dude. That's so powerful.
Yeah, because there is a lot of judgment. I think on your end, it's like the whole spanking and the parenting. There was a lot of judgment. I think for me was going no contact with my family. Was There was a lot of shame. A lot of people, it's very controversial, especially within our culture, to go no contact with your family. It's unheard of,
Yeah.
but it's at times necessary. And I feel like that was also shameful. Like I still haven't told a lot of my cousins or my family that I don't talk to my parents. And when people ask me, Carlos, like, oh, do you talk to your mom, or how's your mom? Is she close by? Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I freeze.
Yeah. Yeah. And where does your, like, when you say
Yeah.
you don't feel comfortable, like, where does your mind take you? Or like, what do you think? Or what do you think holds you back?
I think it's the same thing, the shame. Like, oh, you're a bad daughter. You're going to be perceived
Mm,
as, and I know that's their own stuff, right? But
sure. And it's also to be fair, that's an assumption, right? like because they haven't
Mhm.
said that. For all you know, your
They
cousins are like,
haven't. They haven't, and
finally,
no.
girl, it's about time. You know what I mean? Like for all,
Yeah,
I think about
yeah.
that shit too. I'm like, I hesitate. For all we know, they're probably like, apena.
Apena.
You know what
You
I
know,
mean?
the only person I like, my therapist, when I told her, she was like,
Ya te
"It
habías
was bound to
tardado.
happen. It was bound to happen." Like, and I was like, "You're not shocked?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"No."
Yeah, damn, damn. Yeah, when I
Yeah,
told my therapist kind of, I'm in a similar boat there too. And I was open with her and I was just like, dude, like, I feel like shit. And she asked me, excuse my language there, she asked me, she's like, why do you feel bad? And I'm like, because I value family, because I value connection, because I
exactly.
value the people that have done a lot for me, and I'm very grateful for
Yeah,
those things. And so to question that, to know that I'm not calling this individual every day, that hurts me, and I feel so much shame and so much guilt for it. And then she's so amazing. She was just like, well, let's talk about, remember what we talked about for the last 2 years? Remember when you said this happened, and this happened? And it's like, then I went back to everything that has been
yeah,
normalized for me for my whole childhood. And I'm like, she's like, no wonder your body and your heart right now is like, let's take a little break, man. I'm tired of having to protect you like this all the time. Like, I want you to breathe for a little
totally.
bit. I want you to feel free. And I'm like, I thought, especially, my therapist, also a brown woman. I'm like, she's probably gonna judge me too, because I'm like, she probably values family just as much. She's gonna be like, wow, you ungrateful. And something I've learned, and I shared this with you, is,
Mhm.
it's the phrase like, don't ever bite the hand that feeds you.
Absolutely.
And I think the beautiful part of that is of being grateful. And I think I'm very, very grateful for, and not just family, friends, work opportunities, business opportunities, even other parents that I've met through Julian's stuff, right? Or my coaching when I've had to deal with kids and parents, and like, I just, so many things that I'm like, yeah, I'm grateful for them. And I think there's a lot of beauty within that. There's a good
Mhm.
lesson there. And I also think that through this healing journey, I've learned that not every hand that has fed me has had the best intention
Yeah.
or has fed me the best meal. And so now I think it is also okay to starve a little longer.
Mhm. Yeah.
Find the better hands that feed you, find the better
Yeah.
meal, or sometimes maybe have those meals myself. And so it's changing a lot of that narrative. And it's something that I appreciate about our friendship the most. And like, as you're sharing that, dude, and thank you for sharing everything you did, is I think we resonated a lot with that. But something that I feel I'm very intentional with in my life, and this is what I admire and appreciate so much about you, is like, I'm also not looking for other people that have tourniquets. And what I mean by that, right, is
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, you were spanked. Oh, I was spanked. Oh, cool. We both have tourniquets. Let's just hang out in the tourniquet. And what I really love and admire is just like your resilience and your willingness to be like, yo, we both have the tourniquets. And guess what? We're both trying to figure out how to get out of this. You know what I'm saying?
Digging. We're like trying to
Like,
get out.
it's like
Yeah.
there's parts of that are like, your tourniquet is your tourniquet, my tourniquet's mine. We're not
Yeah.
throwing that weight on each other, but it's nice to
Mm-mm.
know that as we both have these tourniquets, we are trying to figure out how to get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not staying stuck. And you bring up a good point is that a lot of people do. Like they stay stuck and then they just like they don't know how to move forward from it. And I do think I remember our Mi Cafecito conversation we had at the coffee shop.
Mm,
And we were reflecting on our past and our childhood. But we're like, well, what are we doing now? We're both parents. Like, how
yeah.
are we work? Like, it's uncomfortable. And like, what are we doing, actively doing to help better ourselves? And you have always been very great at giving me feedback. And I do remember you said, like, because a lot of people have told me, like, are you avoiding your parents? Are you avoiding having those conversations? And you were the first who were like, I don't sense you're avoiding it. I sense that you're doing this because, like, this was the last resort. And that was so healing for me because I hadn't heard that.
Mm.
That nobody had ever said that, and I was like, "Wow, yeah, you see me. You see
Yeah,
the
for
fact that
sure.
it's been 30 years of me trying, and this was the final straw." And I think that just to kinda give you flowers, like, that was healing for me, Carlos. And to say like, "Yeah, this is gonna now." impact the next generation because it's not being modeled to my son the way that I was treated because I started to see little things.
Sure.
And I was like, yeah. So going back to I do agree with that. We're not staying stuck there.
Yeah, and I think that's a big, especially amongst the men that I've worked with right now facilitating. So what happened is started the Modern Macho, and shout out to my Lisa. She hit me up about an opportunity to become trained to run a nurturing fathers program. It's a 13-week program
Mm.
to help fathers build better connections with their kids. And so I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm in. Like I'm down. Heck
Hmm.
yeah, dude, I'm in. Like I'm totally down for this. And so
Don't
uh,
censor yourself.
I was like, I got to make sure.
Don't censor yourself.
Stay authentic. Dang it, that was intention. All right, you're
Stay
right. You're right.
authentic. No perfection. We're just
Yeah.
show
um,
up as your true self,
yeah,
Carlos.
you're right. You're right. And so I appreciate that. So that's been such a healing experience and such an honor to be able to work with dads and to see them show up week one, just like, oh, why am I here? Like my kid's acting up. My kid needs to step it up. These kids are soft nowadays. And, all I did was smack them on top of the head. What's the big deal? To 13 weeks later go, oh man, like I was so wrong about that. And that's okay because I want to be better. And I want to keep showing up for my kids. It's just going to look very differently. To me is like, dude, I am so lucky that I get to share space with you guys for these
Yeah.
13 weeks, that I get to be here and like witness how powerful it is for these classes to run themselves. Sure, granted, I understand that. I mean, I'm here to help facilitate, to help guide the conversations, to teach, right? And then to see, halfway through how they start holding themselves accountable. It's like it's no longer me trying to talk to them about what we should be doing better, but it's like they're checking each other from a place of love. They're
Hmm.
learning how to communicate with each other. To me, has just been like so healing and so
Hmm.
validating, because I think something that also becomes very scary when you're breaking the cycles is like, is it really going to work? There's always that doubt in my head of like, yeah, break the cycle, don't hit your kid. And then I'm like, but is he going to be disciplined? But am I going to build a relationship? But what if he does do drugs? But what if he does turn, like all these thoughts that come into my head because I've connected this punishment with how I can incorporate raising a good kid. And it's so ingrained into my head that even as I do the research, even as I learn more about it, even as I see how much more of a connection I do have with my child to this day, where like I can even joke with my son and be like, I know you're scared of me. And he gives me a little side eye. He's like, I'm not scared of you. And to me, that's like, that's beautiful. That's so
Aw.
beautiful. I love that
It
he's not afraid of me.
is.
I love that. But 4 or 5 years ago, if he would have said that, I would have felt like that's my pride. Like, how dare you? How dare you not be afraid of me? You know what I mean? It hurts, and I take that very personally. Um, so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but like I just find it so
It's okay.
beautiful to be able to have the conversations, to hold space for each other, and it is very healing. And one thing I did want to share,
Yeah.
like going back to
Yeah.
talking about the transactional type of love, and I've even shared with you that that's how I was thinking about the tourniquet, where it's like we resonate because it's been the same for me, Liz. Where
Mm.
you reached out and it's like, oh, hey, Carlos, like, how was your week? And I'm like, oh, shit, when's the last time I texted? When did I do this? When did I blah, 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 blah? You know what I mean? Like, that's
It's
instantly where
that
it goes.
spiral, right?
Not even just like a thank you, Liz. Like, thanks. Hey, I told you, for those that don't know, I got laid off this week. So it was like, that's been a very nerve-wracking, scary, but exciting transition for me. Like, I'm looking forward to this new season. And when you checked in, there was a part of me that was like, oh my gosh, when's the last time you asked how she's doing? Was it what? And then it made me
Yeah.
realize even further. I'm like, dude, I think this is why you avoid having friendships, is because everything is like very transactional for you. And so because you don't like that and you don't think that that's healthy, instead of figuring out how to have,
Yeah.
or like, having these healthier friendships, you just avoid. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'd rather not, because I don't want to feel guilty. Even though not once have you ever said, hey, Carlos, I feel like you're slipping as a friend. Or, hey, Carlos, I feel like, you're not being here for me. Or, hey, Carlos, I feel like you're not holding. You've never said any of that.
Yeah.
And it's all,
You've actually been one of the people that has been like so loyal and so supportive. And the short amount of time we haven't even known each other for It's almost a year. Almost a year.
Yeah, damn, it has flown. It's
Almost.
flown. Yeah.
Almost a year, but you have been like a very loyal friend. So the fact that it's so interesting just to kind of hear your inner dialogue. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
damn, Carlos.
I'm telling you, yeah. So
Wow.
and I also, that's where we go back to the vulnerability. I see the power of it, because if I don't allow myself to be vulnerable with these conversations, this is healing. This is healing to know it's like, wow, this whole time Liz has been grateful that I see her, and here I am thinking
Mhm.
that I should be calling her every day because we're friends, and that's what friends are supposed to, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, whoa, I'm glad I brought this up. And that's one of the things that I think is the power of the vulnerability, is like, part of the healing process is like, well, where are we at right now? How do we
Yeah.
see things? What do we feel? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not the nicest things. Sometimes it's not the prettiest thing. But like I tell my dads, I'm like, if we don't talk about it with intention, though, we can't get out of it. If right now what
Mm-mm.
you feel like is just wanting to punch your kid in the forehead because he frustrates you, I hear you. I see you. Right. And now we can go, oh, okay, cool. That's where you're at. Let's figure out where we want to be.
Mhm. Let's hold space for that. Let's
Yeah,
validate it. But now let's see like what's next, right? And I think that's why our conversations just flow so nicely cuz Carlos, I don't think we've ever like hung out or talked and it's not more than an hour,
I
2
know, bro. I
hours.
know. I know.
It's like a
Even our little
whole
3-minute check-ins. Let's do this quick meeting for this talk. Hour and a half
and
later.
I block an hour. I'm like, I'm gonna talk to Carlos for about an hour mínimo. Like I remember we went to Long Beach, when we went to Plantitas. And
Me acuerdo.
no te acuerdas. And the car ride home, I was like, let me check in with Carlos. Man, like, because we laugh too. We don't just talk about
No.
our trauma. Like, I was cracking up. We're
Same.
talking about plants and cats, y'all. Like,
That's what I'm saying though. Like, I also think, and that's where I think, like, even my shame and my guilt, that, I mean, I cope with humor sometimes, right? Like, I
yeah,
cope with that. And like, I think there's a huge level of avoidance that comes with that too. And I'll be honest
of
about it.
course.
Um, And sometimes I think it helps me process. It helps bring clarity when I
Mhm.
can joke about the things and then really like put into perspective, like, what am I really saying? You know? And
But
and
because I've seen both, though, Carlos. I think that's why I get that part. But go finish your because I have my own thoughts on
no,
that.
I was just gonna say, like, but I think through that, like, it's healing. And so to be able to find the humor in things is also sometimes even just like a validating point of like, we're past this. And
Yeah.
it's also something that I'm like, I wouldn't want to offend anyone. I'm not trying to hurt someone's feelings. And so I think that, like, even we've joked about it, right? Where I tell you, like, if I get too close to dishes, like, I feel my testosterone levels, like, they get low very quickly, you know? And it's like we can joke where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because the shame and the guilt that I felt from a past partner, it was like, what kind of man are you for even thinking that's funny? And I took that very personally, you know?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious as to what your insight was on
Oh,
that.
I was just no, I was it was interesting because that is part of healing, is the fact that you are able to joke about it. But what I was going back to is I've seen both parts of you. Like I've seen this vulnerable, like we can talk about the trauma we're processing or digesting it, whatever that may be. But then we have these conversations and we joke around with it. And I think going
Yeah,
back to like you told me, like, Liz, I don't think you're avoiding the fact like having a conversation or having a relationship with your family because I think you've seen and heard me talk about it
for sure.
and then we could joke about it and talk
No,
about
you're right.
Usher.
Yeah, right. I know. You're right on that. I definitely do think
Yeah.
like there's a good balance of that. Like there's a balance of like,
Mhm.
because we've had those conversations where it's like, fuck, dude, like we were getting hit, like this fucked us up, and it just it gets very serious, very scary, deep. And then we have other days where we're just like we're sending out memes of like, a puppy like crying, and it's like when your mom yells at you for this, and we're like laughing about it, right? So you're right. There's definitely a balance sometimes where it's like
Yeah.
there's a time and a place, I think, but I feel that we have that kind of friendship where we can read the room and we know when it's a moment of like this is just another
Mhm.
Friday humor, like damn, they fucked us up,
Mhm.
and whatever. But and then there's those days where it's like, yo, I'm really going through it. There's some serious stuff that kind of arises for me. It just feels so
Yeah.
effortless, dude. Our friendship just feels like it just flows. It really does.
Yeah, I think that's what our community is seeing. You know, that's why I keep inviting you, Carlos.
You
People
know,
are asking. People want
give 'em
more,
what they
and they
want.
I think they see that. They see the vulnerability, and this is rare. You don't really see a man and a woman being able to have a friendship like this and just talk about life, talk about their trauma, talk about their interests. Like, you don't see that. You don't see that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I get that. I get a lot of comments. I send them to you. One of them was like, "It's so healing to see a man and a woman have such a beautiful and vulnerable relationship. Thank you for modeling that for us."
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I appreciate about it is like it's not just a man and a woman, but like but we're keeping it real. And what I mean by that is like I'm still aware of as men where we need to do better, right? And like I'm not here to shit on women. Like I'm not here to because at the like but at the end of the day, like I want to date a woman. Like it makes no sense for me to
Mhm.
be like to go
Yeah.
the Modern Macho is about helping men and it's just manly men and we're gonna bash women and it's like why aren't y'all trying to date one at some point? You know, I'm like, you guys are the alpha males. Like, this
Yeah.
doesn't make sense why you would be. Um, and so I think being able to keep it real with each other, holding ourselves like, I don't need to hold you accountable in the sense of like, we both know that it's like we both have the awareness to understand what the heck is happening. So this isn't about like where you feel like it's the parent that's like, oh well, I'm right, Liz. As a woman, this is like, no, you don't. Yeah, you don't need that, and I don't want
Yeah.
that, right? Like I don't want
Yeah.
that either.
Yeah.
So it's like I already know kind of what's going on. You already know what's going on, and I think I can speak on the men that I've worked with, and I can speak on myself. Liz, you have no idea how much our friendship is healing for men that want to hold themselves accountable. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is that because a lot of us were brought up with shame and guilt when we were held accountable, right? Like if you did something wrong, it was okay, well, now you're not enough, right? Or now you need to prove that you're better than that. Or now you need to, or you were supposed to already know that. So do better, right? Like there's all this that comes with it. Nobody's, in my experience, a lot of us have not been brought up with accountability and compassion. Hey, Liz, it's okay. It's okay. All you got to do is pick it up. You didn't do good enough. Hey, it happens.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Step it up and do better next time, right? Or like a way that you can hold someone accountable, that you can incorporate consequences without feeling like you need to belittle someone. And so what I found is that I struggled a lot with, and I think a lot of us struggle a lot with holding ourselves accountable because we're very defensive. Because if I
Mhm.
was to say, hey, Liz, as a man, I acknowledge that I've been objectifying women for a while. I acknowledge that, like, a lot of the stuff that I've been looking in these videos, and you know what I'm talking about, right? In these pictures that I'm going out of my way to see, have now created a different idea of what intimacy looks like, right? I can see that now. I want to hold myself accountable. I want to grow out of that. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we feel like everyone's going to attack us or someone's going to hold one over us, right? Now we have to
Mm.
prove ourselves. And it's like, man, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to be in a place where I have to feel shamed or guilted growing up. So I'd rather just kind of keep it to myself, you know? And so, like I said, in our friendship, to be able to kind of like talk about things from a real place and be like, hey, I feel like men do this. And then to be like, yeah, as women, we do this. Is like, you have
Mhm.
no idea how much that opens the door for me. And I know for other men to be like, oh, wow, I can hold myself accountable. And the right individuals will see
Mhm.
me for who I am. And it doesn't mean there won't be
Yeah.
consequences to the actions. I'm not saying that like it's completely okay and we can continue to do that. But what I'm saying is the way in which we're treated because of that is just a projection.
Mhm. You know, you're talking about your men. The amount of pushback I get from my women when I challenge them. So, are you like the way that we kind of break it down? They're like, well, you know, they start getting defensive. They get angry because we're meant to be right, right?
So true.
We're right. We're he did all of it. He's supposed to read my mind, and I'm like, since when did he get a degree in mental gymnastics? Like,
Hey, if that's a thing, sign me up, bro.
I'm like, when was is that? So I hear them talk, and I'm like, is that the way that you communicated that to them? Well, it didn't sound quite like that. There was a little bit more screaming, or my tone was a little different. And I'm like, well, what do you think that's doing?
Yeah.
They probably already feel shame. Their defense is already going up. There's not a lack of safety here.
Yeah.
And for them to see another woman challenging them, well, you're not on my side.
Yeah.
I'm not
Sure.
saying I'm not on your
Sure.
side. I'm saying, can we look at it from a different perspective, because a relationship is two people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had people reach out to me. I've had women reach out who are like, I've told him to go to therapy and he won't go. How do I get him to go? You know? And
Are
for
you
me,
in therapy?
well, for me, it's always just like, well,
No.
the real question for me is like the real question is like, obviously, you understand that based on what you can control, the individual's not. The question is, how is that affecting your needs? And if that's something that is really affecting your needs that
Yeah.
you can't deal with, why haven't you walked away? Like, what's stopping you from
Yeah.
being able to walk away? Like you said,
Yeah.
it's still the same situation, but looking at it from a different perspective. And I think I see it that way too, because I was told to go to therapy from a partner, and holding myself accountable. I realize now, like, it was never going to work because I was just trying to save my
Mhm.
relationship. I didn't go
Yeah.
because I was really in it for the therapy. I was just going to try to save this relationship. And the reason is because I was scared of being alone.
Mhm. But, Carlos, even going back to, like, what are the needs that are not being met? A lot of the times we don't even know.
Exactly. No,
But
well, I
you
mean,
know why? Because we've been, as women, needing to be these chameleons and having to mold into what everybody wants us to be or look like, right? We were taught that, right? I saw it in my mom, like the people pleasing, the needing to fit in, to feel accepted. And I think just now or recently, I'm learning what's important to me, what my needs are. Because when I ask my women clients, I'm like, well, what is it that you really need? And I hear crickets.
it's wild to think about now for me, but I lived my life that way because it was all we knew. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I always tell the dudes, it's like going to the gym without having a goal or a plan. Like, it's still good, right? Like, I'm not saying you're not doing a
Mm-hmm.
good thing for yourself, but it's like, oh, so like you got reps, or like, are you trying to gain weight? You trying to lose muscle? Like, and it's like, oh no, I'm just like, I'm just here. Like, it just feels good. I'm just here. And I'm like, that was me. That was me in my relationships. And I don't just mean like
Yeah.
romantically, but even friendships. Like, it was like, there was no sustainability with any of it because it was just all
Mm-mm.
there. It was just like, we'll just lean into whatever feels good. That's one of the things that really fills my cup is being able to validate men that are just going through it, man, that are resentful, that are frustrated, that are like upset, and holding them accountable of just like, well, let me ask you this, bro. Like, how do you like to be loved? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so uncomfortable and it's so weird for us.
Yeah.
And and to just be like, bro, you're trying to do something that you don't even know how you like it. Of course you're mad. Like, of course you're frustrated. Like, when's the last time somebody asked you, how you're doing, or what is
Yeah.
it that you need? And like you said, that doesn't justify like, oh yeah, keep being mad because this is right. No, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, cool. Now that we validated that, how can we start working towards figuring those things out?
Out.
Right? It's a
Yeah.
lot of times too, you gotta remember, like, to say, well, just communicate that. Bruh, I don't even know what the fuck I'm trying to communicate. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, how could, like, tell me. I never forget, a younger cat. We had this deep conversation. We went to a restaurant with shout out to the boys. My group of dads, the group of homies that we try to at least do one trip a year where we all get together and hang out. Obviously, we have our group text and everything, just constantly checking in on each other. So we decided to go out to dinner. And we started talking to the waiter, super cool kid, younger
Mm,
cat.
I remember.
Yeah, and at one point I asked him, I was like, dude, how do you like to be loved? And he was like, well, I really like it when a woman. And I was like, no, 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 I'm not a woman, bro. Like, I'm not a woman. Like, how do you like,
Yeah.
as a friend,
Yeah.
if I walk in here again and I see you and I want to be loving towards you, how can I do that? And he was dumbfounded. And I get it. So was I for a long time. And he didn't know how to answer. And I'm like, this is what I'm saying, bro. It's like, we're trying to figure out how to do something that we've never been allowed to do. We've
Yeah.
been robbed of it. And
It's so sad, huh?
it sucks, man. It sucks. It really,
Yeah.
I used to be very angry about it. And like I said, I've been guilty of like trying to hold men accountable from a place of like anger, of like, y'all need to do better. Come on, guys, like, step it up. But I realized part of that too came, Liz, from the fact that I was getting so uncomfortable with my journey
Mm.
that it was like, I want y'all to do this shit too. Like, I don't just want to be the only one, you know? And
You bring up a good point there.
we've talked about that too. Like, I look back at my content from when I first started and it was like, man, go to therapy, like step up, da 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 da, you know? And I realized it was like, well, bro, you were so uncomfortable that like you wanted everyone to do what you were doing because yes, it was good for you, but it's like there was a part of you that wanted community, that needed to heal with others, that like wanted things that you couldn't control to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through doing that and really healing and getting to know myself, I was able to understand that it was like, bro,
Mm.
like, no, like that's not how, you know, that empathy didn't come from going to therapy and learning how to deal with people or figuring out how to love others. It came from really shutting all that down for a second and just
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how to fill my cup.
So,
Because love
Carlos,
is limitless. Like I
oh
you
yeah.
know, I mean, I grew up with this idea of like you have a cup full of love, spread it out wisely. And I'm like, okay, well, I know I need enough to be sustainable, so I'm gonna keep half. And then I have to figure out how to give the rest of it to my son and to my friends and my family. You know, like based on my priorities, I'm gonna give the other half and spread it around. And then and now it's just like, nah, bro, you fill that thing up and just let it overfill. And not only will you fill yours,
Mm-hmm.
you will fill theirs, each and every single one
Yes.
of them.
And you know what? That's something you're always texting me, like, Liz, what are you doing to fill your cup? I see you hustle. I see you working, and I'm like, damn. It gets. I had to take a minute and ask myself, what did you do this week to take care of yourself? And and that just goes to show, right? Going back to our relationship, like I'm not just this therapist. I'm not just this
Yeah,
entrepreneur. Like you, and I think that's the beauty of our friend. You see parts of me that need to be, need a little bit of TLC. And you're
yeah,
like, it's a nice reminder. We're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I need to get off my laptop right now
sure.
and go do something for myself. But I was going to ask you, given where you're at right now in your journey, and I'll share a little bit of mine too, but what would you tell that person that you've talked about a lot in your content, the person that was drinking, doing drugs, hitting your son? What would this version of Carlos tell that version,
That
knowing what you know now?
that's a great question. I think I would say, man, that I see you, that I think that the things that you're craving underneath all that are beautiful. That the shame, that the guilt that you're probably carrying because you yell at your child, I love that you want to be there for your kid. I love that you are trying to raise a good child by doing what you think is the right thing. And that I see those parts and that I think that we need to change what that looks like. But you're not a bad person. You're doing everything that you know how to do with what you've had. And so I love that the intention behind of what you're doing, even when you're going home and you're having a drink because it makes you more patient. I love that you are coping and trying to figure out a way to be patient for your kids. What I'm saying is like there's a better way to not beat yourself up that'll help you build that connection with the people around you. Let's change what it looks like, not the intention behind what you're doing.
How did that feel to say it just emotionally? Because I was like, wow, like I felt like that's empowering, right? To hear that. But how did that feel for you?
Liberating. I feel empowered. I feel I feel privileged to be able to say that to somebody else. Because before it
Mhm.
was like my thoughts are like, what are you saying? Why would you say that? What is wrong with
Mhm.
you?
Mhm.
Because there's this expectation of like, be good, be patient, don't drink, don't hit, don't yell, don't this. And Liz, we've been hearing that for forever.
Mhm.
4 times as many men are dying than women, like consistently. Like they're taking their lives. Something has to change. And
Suicide.
my thing is just like,
Yeah.
if that works and it's helped people, that's awesome. But I feel like there's this
Mm.
big middle section that's getting no love. And I'm like, if we can't meet men like myself where they're at, we cannot help them. If we
Mm-mm.
keep seeing people for their potential instead of their capabilities, we cannot help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So share your story. Tell me where you're
Yes.
at. Let me hear it. I want to know who you are, why you do what you do in order for me to be able to help you. In
Mm-hmm.
order for me to be able to guide you so that you can start being the man that you want to be. Because a lot of us, I think, have just accepted that this is the kind of life that we live.
Yeah.
And my thing is
And
always just like,
yeah,
how is that building relationships with the people around you? Because here's the thing
exactly.
too, Liz, like
Yeah.
I'm not going out of my way like to save. I don't think it's about saving people or anything like that. Like if this is working for you and you have a great relationship with your kids and a great relationship with your partners and with your family, yo, tell Carlos to shut the heck up. You know what I mean? Like and by all means for me,
Yeah.
because that's what I love and fulfills my cup. If I hear that, bro, if anything, teach me your ways. I want
Mm-hmm.
to learn from you because whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
doing that's very different to me is just another way to build connections. And I'm here for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It, you're right. For men, it's suicide. For women, it's health. The
Mm,
amount of women
yeah.
dying because not all of us, but we are the internalizers, right? We were
Yeah.
taught to calladita te miras más bonita, right? Like and I seen it in my family, the amount of women who have heart issues, right? All the unprocessed
Mm,
trauma, the inability to share your story because of the shame. And I see it in my clients, the headaches, the every time I ask, well, how did your doctor's appointment go? Well, I have heart issues now. I have digestive issues. I have thyroid issues. So for us, our health is killing us because our body is remembering everything and we're suppressing everything. And I think that was one of my turning points too, because when going back to my younger parts, there's two that really stand out. Mine was my early 20s and my 16. And I know I bring up my 16-year-old self a lot, but that I was going through a lot myself with my mental health, a lot of family dynamics. My father, possible infidelity, and I
mm,
was the one that's was able to set boundaries with my family. It didn't go well. And my 21-year-old, 20 early 20s, she was drinking, she was partying, she was doing all the things because that's how she was coping. She
yeah.
was coping
Her
because
best life.
she couldn't what was happening at home, her mom was sick, physically
Wow.
sick, like, and to think maybe like, "Is this your future, Liz?" And I was like, "Wow, this is sad. If this is how my life is gonna continue." And that's when obviously I was seeing my own therapist and something needed to change,
Yeah. What do you think
Carlos.
drove you to that, dude? Because I think for a long time for me, and I think for a lot of us, like we accept it. Like even if we understand that it's not
Mhm.
the best, we accept it. Why do you think you were just not comfortable with accepting it, even
I
though you
I
understood it?
Yeah, you know what it was is that my mom, and you see her face, she looks miserable, Carlos.
Mm,
And there was just, and I think going to school and yeah, the textbooks and everything, but I started therapy, like really legitimately started therapy when I was in my graduate program and just learning how this is not okay. I still thought it was okay. I was
sure.
in graduate school. I thought it was okay. And I was like, this is not okay. And I I was like, I don't want this life. I don't want the life that my family is living. I think at 16 I knew that too, but I rebelled and I just didn't like how it was making me feel. I was such an angry kid. Like just looking back, I was just so angry. I don't know, maybe I just don't know how to answer that, but I think maybe when I was in graduate school, I started seeing things differently. But I think my 16-year-old self was very wise at her age,
Mm. Had
knowing
to,
that
huh? You had to
no,
mature
because
very quickly.
I was angry. My family hated me because of how angry I was, but because of the injustice that was happening at home.
And let me ask you this: is your 16-year-old self? Would you say that she was, as she was angry, was she supported and asked what she needed to get out of that, or was she having the
Never.
finger pointed at her?
Oh, I've been the black sheep. And you know what's interesting is that my dad, which I'm not close to at all, he was the black sheep of his family.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I saw it. I saw it. And no, never was I asked. Never was I, hey, Liz, why are you so mad?
What do you
Why are
need,
you
right? Like,
well, but because my grades were great, I graduated with
mm,
honors, I got into the school. That's all that mattered.
sure.
Doesn't matter that this angry adolescent is over here like not does maybe didn't have the words to like really talk about what she needed, right? But she
Yeah.
was in a lot of pain. She was in so much pain. My mental health was probably at its worst at that point. So depressed, so hanging around the wrong crowd, like just I look at her and I'm like, man, I feel for you. Like, I feel for you. I feel
Dude.
emotional just talking about her. I see her face and I think about like, wow, nobody really thought to ask you. You know, you had your friends, you know, the drinking and the partying at that young age. And that felt good to me. Like, oh, I feel connected.
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like that's my chosen family. And, but no one ever said, like, Liz, what's going on? Like, what really do you need right now? Why are you acting out so much? And
I
I
also
got
feel like
into, yeah.
I feel like there also gets to a point where like when you are asked, it's almost just easier to lie about it because you've
Mhm,
already been protecting yourself for so long that it's like to really be honest and be like, this is what's going on.
mhm.
It's kind of like, yep, okay, like for what?
And I think I've noticed that too, being away from my family now almost 6 months of no talking, that more things are like coming to light and like how normalized so much of this was.
Is there
So
anything you can
much.
think of that you could share that you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I think just stepping away is just how much, and I knew this, but how much my mom didn't protect me. Man,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's this expectation now to be even better of a mom. So I'm trying to navigate that part where like not to be too hard on myself that I'm doing enough for my son, but there's this like, wow, like you really didn't protect me.
And when you say
Like you
protection, would you say it's more emotionally than literally physically?
both. Both. I went through both. I went through physical and emotional abuse and like, wow, like seeing my son, I'm like, man, I would
I
just
could never.
and I understand her trauma. I know her story. But I think this is also my opportunity now to like let this part of myself just be angry and let me just validate her like that she wasn't protected. Like she
Yeah.
wasn't that's why I'm so hyper independent. I had to be my own protector. And it's so hard, right?
For those who can't see, I'm eye
It
rolling over here. Yeah.
yeah, and it's because that I didn't know that. Protection was you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table,
Yeah.
but
That's
you're also
something
getting
that
abused on the side.
being gas and now being gaslighted for the things that we're ungrateful for, right? No,
Yeah.
I think the part that really like stands out because I see it now, dude. I see it now, and I know that it's gonna. I don't want to say it's gonna be an issue because I'm grateful that I have the tools, but I know that it's gonna be an obstacle that I have to face because I've become so hyper independent now that the thought of a relationship is like. I know that those are conversations I
Yeah.
will be able to have, but like, dude, what scares me about it? Not scares me, but I know that something that's gonna arise is like I've had to become so independent that I know that there's like this fear of being vulnerable or like allowing someone to help me that makes me feel like I'm losing my independence. And I know that I'm glad that I know that now that has nothing to do with the individual that's in front of me and has everything to do with my upbringing. And I'm like, that right there is already, I know that I have to tell myself give myself grace because that's already 10 steps ahead. You already
Yeah.
understand that not once, there might be an opportunity where your partner is like, hey, I'll pay for it. And it's like, oh no, you know what I mean? Like this person thinks I can't handle my
Oh,
own. Like
I
I can't do, you know
cringe
what I'm
thinking
saying? And it's like, fuck, like no, 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 no. I don't want to be able. And it's like, dude, that literally goes up against everything that you've been preaching and practicing and breaking the cycle. And so there will be a time
Mhm.
and an opportunity for me to do the work with that. But it is like, it's hard. I mean, even my last relationship, it took me a long time to be angry about it. Like literally every time I talked about this individual, it was just like, no, but she was amazing. No, but she was really sweet. No, but she was really nice. And it's like finally I had to allow myself to just be like, fuck that, dude. Like, that was messed up. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I know what I did. And this is not about taking accountability, but that was messed up. But I think to your point, as you're talking about, like, your
Yeah.
mom and your childhood, it's like, well, I've always done that. I've always like seen just the good and justified the way that I
Mhm.
was treated by people.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Wow.
wild how it always just like plays out full
Yeah.
circles, huh?
Yeah. So going back to our friendship, I think that you've seen even today, you've seen parts of me that a lot of people haven't. And once again, there hasn't been shame, there's no judgment, and there's a lot more, but the fact that you see it and you
Yeah.
hold space for it is so important because I'm still trying to do that for myself. And while navigating being a therapist and holding that for so many other people right now. So thank you for doing that for me. Thank you for allowing me to have all these uncomfortable feelings right now because I feel right now really sad, but I feel happy and I feel like, damn, after this, I'm going to go and be like, wow, why did I say that? Why did
That
I share that?
vulnerability hangover is always a pain
That
in the butt.
it is. But you
No, I
know
see
what? But
you.
this is part of why I've grown so much, though.
But I
So
think this is,
gracias.
yeah, dude, and of course, and here to hold space, and thank you for listening. You know that I always appreciate you being able to listen, to provide your insight as well, and sometimes just holding space, just being an ear, because I don't always necessarily need the answers, like you know. And I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I think we've reached that point in our friendship too, when it's very clear, when it's like, yo, I need your advice. What is
Mm-hmm.
the best kind of cat? What is the best kind of plant? Right.
Hey.
and, when, and when it's just like, yo, I'm just going through it, like, just being here and like, we're chilling, dude. That's all I'm looking for right now.
What do
Um,
you need right now, Carlos? Right?
yeah, exactly. What do we need right now? Like that. You taught me that. You modeled that for me.
Mm,
Like, because that's something that I think of with Julian, and I also understand that like not Julian's not always going to necessarily be like able to process it that way, where like we can have that conversation, but like always reminding myself like, what does he need right now? You know, like what does he actually need? And man, we could talk forever. I think just empathy is everything, dude. Empathy is everything. That's the power of healing.
mm-hmm.
I think because our parents weren't able to have those privileges that we now have, like I think they lacked a lot of that empathy. And it's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate, right? It's sad to
It
see them
is.
also kind of break down. And then moving forward, looking at our children, it's like that's why it's so important to be able to empathize,
Mm-hmm.
because it is. I think about it too, and I'm like, you know what? Like maybe I do have the privilege, as a first generation Mexican American. Like
Mm-hmm.
my struggle wasn't to leave my home country to be here. I feel like I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't go through this healing process. This is my discomfort. This is my leaving my country, is sitting down with all my poops and being like, let's, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, this is what it looks
Yes,
like for
Carlos.
my
Yes.
generation, is like,
We're
yeah,
the cycle breaker. That's what it is, right? You came, you got us a better life. Now it's our turn to break these cycles, these multi-generational cycles. And I love that. I love that you said that. It's art, it's different for us, but it's still a struggle.
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And yes, it's definitely a struggle, dude. And that's
And
another
you know,
thing
for
I'm
the
glad I'm not alone on in this journey.
yeah, and for those of you who don't know, it takes 3 generations to break a cycle, and we're though that generation. And I think that's why, I know we have to wrap up, but I think that's why our reel was so went viral. For those
Oh
of you who
yeah,
haven't watched it,
yeah,
shout
almost
out
a
to
million.
Los Bookies.
Yeah.
We're first gen and but because people resonated the comments, Carlos, the comments, the thank you for seeing me, thank you for validating and um I know mine was you could you could share yours, but our resume started at age 5 and
I think mine was like, what, like "Estás o te haces," right?
oh, people love that one. So
Yeah.
it goes to show the need for us to be talking about this, especially as first gen folks, like breaking the cycles. Not really having a role model. We are each other's role models, Carlos.
Hey, dude, you asked me, right? You're like, who are a lot of people that you listen to, that you watch? And I'm like, I was thinking about some of the guys that are like, content creators that I follow. And then I was telling you, I was like, my guy DJ is like my biggest role model, right? DJ inspires all, and he's one of my best friends. Like, he's a brother to me. Like this, and I thought, I was like, there's Jay Shetty, there's Justin Baldoni, there's, like these different individuals. But I'm like, damn, when I think of like like someone that I look at that I'm like, that's me. Like, brown men everywhere that are doing. I mean, there's, I could definitely think of a handful of guys, like, like Alejandro is like a therapist, and I'm like, dude, that's dope. But very
Yes.
limited individuals that I'm like, damn, man, we need to share our stories, bro. We are so powerful. Like, there is so much that impact that we can create by sharing our story. And I think we're proof of that, because here we are doing it for the first time after a year of all this. Hey, let's talk about this topic. Let's talk about that. I feel that it's like, I hope you're proud of yourself, and I want to give you tons of flowers, because I got to see a side of Liz today that was just Liz.
Yeah.
And I
I
get
got
to
to see
see, like, bro, there's so much, like, the irony behind us wanting to help people is like, we are going to be doing so much by us just sharing our friendship, not by
that's
educating
it.
them on shit. You know what I mean?
We didn't talk
I
about
love
any key terms
that.
here.
No big words, no
No
attachment
big
styles, no
word.
love languages, no none of this
No,
other junko.
nothing. Just our story, just who we are, our life, and how we got here, and how we're continuing to live our life with intention. Pero, okay, no, oh yeah, there is room for part 2. We got to
Hey,
do a part 7, a part 8.
you know,
Pero gracias,
of
gracias,
course.
Carlos. Once again, thank you for modeling to me what a healthy male is. And ladies, not all men are the same.
I always say all women are the same except for one. Of
I mean it though, Carlos. Gracias. Like,
course.
we joke about it all the time, but gracias for being a healthy male figure in my life that is just, able to talk about difficult things, but also talk about cats and plants. Like,
Hey.
what a better combo is that? So, Carlos, before we wrap up, tell our audience, how can they support the work you're doing? And before we have you on for our part 2, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so right now we're going to be starting the Nurturing Father program again in Spanish, which I'm really excited about. It's going to kick off next month. We are going to start our social hours in person. We still haven't figured out if it's going to be the end of the month or we're going to do the week before that. So just stay tuned. You can follow us on Instagram at the Modern Macho. You can go on www.themodernmacho.com. You can see everything that we're doing there. Currently, we are not doing any podcast episodes. We kind of just took a break from it, decided to breathe and tackle a little more of our inner work. But there are a lot of episodes that are either on Spotify or on Apple. We have conversations with therapists. Me and my best friend are also just kind of checking in on each other on a weekly basis. So check that out. And I do also facilitate breathwork opportunities, really introducing breathwork to men like myself that know nothing about it, that were either intimidated by it or just thought it was for women. And it's a very powerful tool that along Vidi and Christine, two amazing individuals. They're Reiki masters. Vidi's also a therapist. And they're cool people. Like, they get it. They understand how this is. And I'm very mindful of who I collaborate with in these environments. And so I believe it's April. It's the first weekend of April. I think it's the 4th, I believe.
Nice.
We'll be hosting another breathwork event. So we're going to do a couple different modalities, as well as holding space and, having a little men's group there, and a potential cold plunge as well. So if anyone is interested,
Ooh.
send a DM. If you have hesitations or you're on the fence about it, also send me a message. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or doubts.
Thank you, Carlos.
And once again, thank
And
you for having me.
absolutely. Thank you for coming back and being a guest today. We got to find another word. I'm sorry. It doesn't.
We'll figure it
Right. It's
out.
on my to-do list. It's on my to-do
Yeah,
list.
we'll figure it out.
Well, thank you everybody who tuned in to our episode today. Make sure you listen to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcast. The live video will be on YouTube and calidadholisticwellness.com. Make sure you check us out at Calidad Holistic Wellness and Cafecito Calidad podcast. Write us a comment, give us a review, make sure you follow us. It helps the podcast and it helps us to continue to grow. So thank you so much for joining Carlos and myself for coffee today. And we look forward to talking to y'all soon. Bye.